Welcome to Echoes in the Gallery. I am your host, Susan L. Sistrunk, and it is my pleasure to bring you my first original podcast set in a series of volumes. Each episode will be featured weekly on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Tonight, during episode 10, The Suspicion, we will learn about the dark history surrounding Rachel Warren. Let us step into the gallery and begin. Episode 10, The Suspicion. Wait, there was a business proposal from Rachel. I should have told you. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through with it. Jonathan looked nervously at Gwen. There was no way she could know what was about to happen. He would have to talk his way out of it somehow, so she didn't suspect something romantic between he and Rachel. Why wouldn't you tell me? Rachel? After all this time? Gwen felt her heart beat faster. Heat rose to the injury surrounding her stitches. This is the last thing I need right now, Jonathan. Tomorrow is Friday, and I have to deliver the painting. Whatever that woman wants from you, we have no time for it. In fact, let's just get through this, and then I think it's best if we part ways. You have done enough. Gwen thought about asking him what he was really up to with Rachel, but didn't really feel like allowing that unhinged woman any power in her life. Before she could consider pressing the issue, her phone rang. It was Tuturia. How is the painting coming along? It's done, just cooling now. Okay, are you all right? You sound odd. I'm fine. I'm just ready to get this over with and get back to a normal life without so much clutter in it. Gwen shot Jonathan a furious glance. Okay, well, it's getting late. Get some sleep and we will rendezvous at the address I sent you. Sergei and I will leave the building in a cab at 10 a.m. You two should be dressed as we planned. Stay for at least an hour so it looks like the scenario we talked about. I understand, Gwen said. I'm meeting Ivanov at a small cafe tomorrow at 5 o'clock to deliver the painting. Jonathan could feel his nerves build. At some point in the morning, he would have to get away from everyone to make the switch with Rachel. If Gwen knew about it, it would be unfortunate. While he hoped their relationship could be salvaged, he was beginning to have doubts. Jonathan stepped toward Gwen as she turned away. Just leave. I don't have time for any more right now, Gwen said without looking at him. Tuturia hung up and thought to herself, did they think she was stupid? Jonathan was a moron if he presumed for one moment she had not bugged their phones. How did he think she found out where they lived in the first place? She believed Gwen, but Jonathan was another story. There was a situation evolving between himself and this woman Rachel. The two were very careful not to talk about details on the phone, yet it involved art somehow, and maybe more, which meant they had actually been meeting without Gwen's knowledge. She needed Sergei to trace the woman's number. Tuturia picked up her phone. I need a name and an address associated with the number. Jonathan is up to something, and we need to know what it is. Inside her apartment, Rachel sat on the sofa in the dark. Her drink sat next to a bottle of pills. She was becoming incensed. He'd better deliver the painting, she thought. That bitch who Jonathan was in love with had created enough barriers in her relationship with him. Rachel knew Jonathan still loved her, and it would be wise for Gwen to not get in her way. The alcohol and the pills were starting to work on her judgment, and thoughts of violence and distrust began to take hold. She opened the top drawer of her dresser. A generous supply of guns looked up at her. I think the Glock will do nicely for this, Rachel whispered out loud. Jonathan was always squeamish when it came to guns. It always made her think of him as a coward. Just in case that had changed or that little girl decided to interfere or be a hero, it was a good idea to be prepared. Sergei was ready for some information for Tuturia the next morning. Rachel Warren. She worked for the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art before suffering a nervous breakdown a few years ago. She disappeared, and it seems she spent some time in a mental institution. Apparently, she was obsessed with Jonathan and stalked him extensively after he became involved with Gwen. She's been arrested several times on drunken disorderly conduct, stalking, assault, and resisting arrest. And according to phone records, it appears Jonathan and Rachel have been in contact without Gwen's knowledge for months. Should we inform her? No. She already knows something is going on. Let's get through today. I wonder what piece of art they are referring to. Tuturia groaned. Her plan seemed to be unraveling due to the constant interference. This should be interesting. Are you through the firewall? Just now. Sergei sounded relieved. Good. Get to work on his accounts, she stated, and hung up. At 8 a.m. Friday morning in the gallery, Jordan looked up from the front desk. A tall, slender woman was walking in the front door. Wow. She was gorgeous. The royal purple dress she wore contrasted beautifully with her long auburn curls. She smiled a brilliant flash of white teeth. Hello. Aren't you handsome? Jordan blushed hard. He found himself speechless. So, would you know where I can find Jonathan Brooks? Actually, Jordan stammered, he just came in. I'll get him for you. Thanks so much. I'll just wait here. A moment later, Jonathan walked towards her. She couldn't believe how he still made her heart skip. Right this way, Miss Warren, Jonathan said. Jordan felt uneasy. There was something about the way the two looked at each other he didn't like. Gwen was like family to him. She was the one who had persuaded Jonathan to take him in after he'd been ousted from Berkeley. He walked slowly and quietly toward the back of the gallery, keeping far enough behind so not to be noticed. Jonathan came out with a painting wrapped and put the Kandinsky in a crate after taking it off the wall. What was he doing? This woman was not the owner of the Kandinsky. Jonathan unwrapped the other painting and placed it on the wall where the painting had been. Jordan was too far away to see what it was. Oh no. This doesn't look good. Jonathan and Gwen always told him when a transaction was about to take place. What was this? Jonathan completed crating the painting and handed it to the woman, who looked at him with more than friendship in her eyes. Suddenly, after a silent murmur, they leaned toward each other and kissed deeply. What was going on? Jordan felt his anger surge at the thought of Jonathan betraying Gwen. The two were still kissing, and it appeared they were not going to stop any time soon. Jordan's breath caught, and he gasped involuntarily. Jonathan looked over Rachel's shoulder just in time to see Jordan duck into the side gallery. He would need to deal with this. Jonathan escorted Rachel out of the gallery and into her car. Walking back into the building, he locked the front door behind him. "Jordan," he called out. A few seconds later, Jordan walked out into the open, looking nervous. "Hey," Jonathan called to him. "How's it going?" Jordan looked at him with recognizable distrust. He had seen the look in Gwen's eyes many times. "Mr. Brooks, what were you doing with that woman? I saw you two kissing." "Jordan, it's not what you think." Jonathan needed to fix this, fast. "Jordan, she's an old friend. Just an old friend." Jonathan was raising his hands in the air and looking flustered. "Mr. Brooks, how can you do this to Miss Gwen, and what were you doing with the Kandinsky? I saw there is another one on the wall. Does Miss Gwen know about this? That painting belongs to—" Jonathan cut him off. "Look, it's really none of your business, and the less you know, the better." Jonathan's fist clenched by his sides. "Please don't say anything to Gwen." Jordan pulled out his phone. "I don't like this. The situation is bad enough as it is. I'm going to call her." Jonathan quickly lunged at Jordan to grab the phone as he ducked into the office, trying to shut the door behind him. Jonathan pushed in the door and wrapped his hands around Jordan's throat, screaming, "No! You can't tell anyone!" Jordan scanned the room with his peripheral vision. He was close to the desk. On it was a razor knife from working on gallery tags earlier that day. He grabbed it and plunged it into Jonathan's neck. Blood began to pour from Jonathan, and he released Jordan's throat. He immediately became faint and sank to the floor. Jordan looked at his boss in horror. What had he just done? Jonathan was unconscious. Thinking quickly, he hurried to the bathroom through the office. He had heard Jonathan lock the gallery door after he escorted the woman out, but Jordan realized he had limited time in case a patron arrived. He must act quickly. Splashing water on his face, Jordan resisted the urge to cry. Now was not the time. He washed the blood off his hands and cleaned the sink. How was he going to deal with the body? Surely Jonathan was dead. Disposing of dead bodies wasn't really in his job description. After taking a few moments to compose himself, Jordan walked out into the office and stopped short. There was nothing except a puddle of blood and a trail leading out the back door. Jonathan was gone. This concludes episode 10 of Echoes in the Gallery. Please join me, your host, Susan L. Sistrunk, next week for episode 11, The Panic. Until then, thank you for listening, stay safe, and love each other.